Good day, everybody. Leadership. Let's talk about leadership. One of the best subjects to ever talk about, I think. Most people want to be a leader. What's great about being a leader? You kind of have an idea or thought. And really, the substance of leadership is convincing people that you're right. Convincing people that what you're doing is what they should be doing. That's leadership. And who doesn't want to be their own boss, their own person, who controls their own direction? And somewhat like the Pied Piper, gets other people to follow. That's a great adventure. As opposed to being told what to do, having to follow somebody else, especially if you don't agree with where they're going. So there's a number of aspects about leadership that are attracted to just about anybody. Even if you're just in a family and you want to be the person who is in control of the destiny of those within your family. That's a great experience, great responsibility. Most people would rather be on that side of the fence rather than the other side, which means you got to do it this way because I said to do it that way. We're going to focus on leadership today and how to be a great leader, the best leader. The best leader within an organization, of course, but also the best leader in yourself, and why leadership is so important. And there's some aspects of leadership that come to mind, maybe in an organization, but not the personal life, and vice versa. But we're going to try to talk about the generic characteristics that a true leader should have. We're going to say a great leader, though, because if you're a leader that has nefarious aims, if you're a leader that has destructive ambitions, that's not the leader that we want. We want a great leader, a good leader, somebody who's going to make something better, to improve upon the world in which they live. We would start by saying, name a great leader that you have studied, and then what you learned from that person. What is the characteristic that made them great? As we start our presentation, we want to talk about that we don't know what's possible until you can see what's possible. So hopefully in this presentation, you may not know a lot about a leader, our leadership, but hopefully after this presentation is done, you'll be able to say that, wow, I didn't know that that was possible. I didn't know that that was an aspect that we needed to elaborate upon. But now that I know, I'm going to work towards that. So you don't know what's possible until you can see what's possible. Hopefully this presentation will show you some of the aspects that I think are important, I think. Kind of a leadership statement, right? In leadership, we want to talk about four characteristics. There's almost a 5, and I'll talk about that later, but basically 4 characteristics. These are mine. These are what I think a person needs to have in order to be a leader. They're not the definitive list. In fact, you may find that you need 2 or 6 or 8. I keep it to a small list because people can remember them. But this is what I think a leader needs to have. If nothing else, hopefully it fosters a debate amongst yourself and other people as to what you think a leader should have, and then you work towards that direction so that you can acquire these characteristics, and you yourself can be a leader, and you can change something for the better. What does a leader have? They have dreams, they have determination, they have an ability to work hard, and they're a good person pursuing good ambitions. I think if you can have these 4 characteristics, you will be a leader. And hopefully not just a leader, but a good leader. Maybe even great. Each one of these we're going to talk about through our presentation. Hopefully it gives you a sense of what you can do to become this type of great leader. Dreams. Often known as the passion. I have this saying that says, follow your passion no matter the adversity or criticism encountered. Again, follow your passion no matter the adversity or criticism encountered. Do what you have meant to do. I think every single person you meet knows what they were meant to do. They may not follow it. They certainly know what they were meant to do. They know that they were meant to work with cars or be an engineer. I love teaching and writing. If I could teach and write all the time, that's what I would do. That is the dreams. And the question to ask is, if you could do or be anything, what would it be? That's how you find out what your passion is. If somebody came to you tomorrow with, since we're talking about magic, a magic wand, and says, hey, I'm giving you the power to do whatever you've wanted to do, that answer is going to be your passion in life. But if for those who don't know what their passion is, how can they determine what their passion is? What's a good example or strategy to determine what your passion is? Passion, as we know, is the call, the adventure of your life. It's what you were born to do. To find out what your passion is, Basically, there's 5 areas that you can review or study to determine what your true passion is. The first is education. Passion is learned through education. Interesting, right? First is, and when we talk about education, what do we mean by education? What type of education can we research or study to find out what our passion is? There's basically three educations. First, gaining knowledge. Second, learning principles. And third, trying to strengthen and create the will. So first is knowledge. This is where we call this foundational. This is where you learn about yourself, theories, studies, strategies. These are what you utilize to implement along your path to achieving your passion. If you were in business, you would learn about marketing, finance, and accounting. If you were in journalism, you'd learn about communication, even conflict resolution. So you try to learn as many subjects as possible with the hope that as you continue to learn these subjects, something comes to mind. That's why in college we often spend our first year or two on what's called breadth. And that is to expose you to many different types of classes as possible with the hope that you're going to take a class and say, wow, this is interesting. This is what I want to do. I remember when I was going to undergraduate school, I was taking geology. I thought, I don't want to be a geologist, but I wouldn't have known that had I not taken geology. I knew after I took that class, this is not for me. Again, you don't know what's possible until you can see what's possible. I saw what was possible. I didn't like it. Doesn't mean there's something else out there that I do like, though. Principles. We hope in our education we learn these principles of honor and decency, part of morals and ethics, right? That is going to be even more important when we talk about the fourth aspect of leadership. And then we get the will to make the world a better place. We want to learn through education confidence, courage, faith, and a lack of fear. Faith means faith in ourselves, a belief that we could do something. Also a belief that we matter. Those are all important aspects through education. Second is through experience. Passion through experience. So we can try to find out what our passion is through the educations, but we also find out about our passions through experience. There's a saying that says, without knowledge, you rely on attitudes and emotions. Without experience, you rely on untested theories or concepts. So we know that the consumption, the learning of knowledge, occurs with education. The application of that knowledge occurs with experience. There's a great saying that says, the fight changes with the first punch. It's an old boxing saying. And I've always liked that, which means that you can study as much as you want, but then you got to get in the ring and actually box. And that often is where you need to change your strategy, mainly because we don't know the strategy of the other person in the ring. So the only way we're ever going to know the strategy of the other person in the ring is to actually get in the ring. And then we're going to have a backup, i.e. contingency plan. Remember, as a business, we're going to have a strategy to succeed. The business across the street has a strategy to succeed as well. And we're not going to know their strategy until we implement our strategy, or vice versa. And then we're going to have to assess and adapt. Two of the greatest words in the English language, assess and adapt. Assess and adapt. Good statements. Passion through travel. So we've learned education and experience, and now travel. You often, as I said, don't know what's possible until you can see what's possible. The journey to a foreign land is an outstanding experience to study the past, the history of that past, and also the promise of the future. There's a great saying that says and it was from Thomas Sowell, who was a teacher at Stanford University, and he said, travel is fatal to prejudice, which means that the more you travel, the more you expand your horizons, your mind, the less you're fearful or afraid of. I believe that to this day. We travel continually. We travel because once you're exposed to different walks of life, areas of the world, then you're less apprehensive of what you see. Different cultures, languages, beliefs, religions, governments, family structures, philosophies, professions, sporting events, all those are exposed when you travel. You have a greater understanding, and then you're less judgmental. You also have greater commonality. You see that there's fewer differences. And then you have greater courage to explore more, and that has less fear. So travel is a great way to illuminate some of the passions. You see things that you may not have known existed, and then you may think in your mind, that's what I want to do. Passion through reading. Reading is a great enterprise. Not every subject can be taught in school, and not every place can be reached through travel. Some have to go through your imagination. That's where reading comes in. It's an imaginative exercise. It's one of life's great adventures. The hope, idealism, the promise, and the goodness all come from reading. They're ordinary people performing extraordinary feats. The story of the young boy who puts his finger in the dam and he stops the dam from overflowing and saves a town. That's what children learn at a young age, that yes, you can do it. It's the little engine that could, right? And I often, as we talk about this presentation, like to highlight great people who we have seen through our life that may inspire us. One of those people is Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton is obviously a great entertainer, great business woman, great humanitarian. We know that she sold over 100 million albums. Amazing, right? And has dozens of number one hits. She's won Emmys, Grammys, been nominated for Oscars and Tonys. She was awarded $100 million by Jeff Bezos because of her charity work, money for her to use to continue that work. But I think that what she wants to be best known for is this aspect of the imagination library. It was created because her dad couldn't read or write, and he was the smartest person she ever met. She learned much from him. She thought, wow, can you imagine what he could have done if he could have read and write? And so she started this foundation where any child can get a book every month until they're 5. To date, there's over 1.5 million books mailed every month by Dolly. She's mailed out over 167 million books so far, all free, paid for by her foundation. She believes that the seeds of dreams are often found in books. And then she often said, too, that as long as you have a book, you can self-educate yourself. You may not need to go to a library. So the point about highlighting Dolly Parton, who we've seen several times in concert, a great fan of, I think that she's done great things, is that this is a person who's done something great with her money. I would say that she's one of the great leaders of her time. She did something with the great successes that she had. And Imagination Library is something that she's most proud of over any award that she's ever received. So a passion through reading. And lastly, a passion through the people we meet. The hopes and dreams arise from those we meet, from grandparents to parents, from teachers to spouses, friends to foes, yes, foes, and supervisors to subordinates. There's a great saying that says, associate not with evil, lest you increase their number. Associate not with evil, lest you increase their number. Another statement that says, associate with goodness and you become good. Associate with evil and you become evil. Same kind of concept. You often are determined by the people you hang around with. There's a great saying, too, that says you're judged by the company you keep. And this is why parents sometimes will not let their children go with individuals or hang around with individuals that they think may not lead them along the right path. So we want to associate with good people because we ourselves then become good. There's a great story about Nobel Prize winners. And there's a high percentage of Nobel Prize winners that have studied under Nobel Prize winners themselves. And the point is, there are certain things that you learn from people that you can't learn from a book or from traveling. It's just by that human connection and interaction. A great story, a great reminder on the importance of meeting with and talking to people who have done great things in their life. That's passion. Now we'll move on to determination. The never give up attitude. Never, ever, ever give up. So no matter what obstacle is within your path, to never give up. That's where that saying I said earlier was follow your passion no matter the adversity or criticism. Because if you try to do something great in your life, there will always be somebody to say, you're not great. It's not because you're not, it's because they're not. And they don't want to feel less worthy because your accomplishments are more worthy. But we found throughout life that the great events of our time were begun by those very few who took a stand and never gave up. who had a noble, admirable, and just cause. Gandhi dreamed of living in an independent India and sparked a nonviolent protest in an effort to make the independent India a reality. There's Rosa Parks, who refused to move to the back of a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and she sparked the civil rights movement. There's Candy Lightner, whose daughter was killed by a drunk driver, and when she found out that it was his fifth offense and that he would serve less than 2 years in prison for her death, she started Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Very important cause to me. One of my best friends, John Smith, was killed by a drunk driver when he was 18 years old, and this individual had multiple convictions of drunk driving. And I remember that to this day, and that his life and death has inspired me to try to do something great with the time I've had. Again, about the people we meet, it's a great example. There's no limit to what we can achieve if we're willing to pay the price in terms of criticism and adversity along that path. Margaret Thatcher once said, "If my critics saw me walking on the Thames River, they would say it was because I couldn't swim." Think about that for a second. If you walk on water, people would still criticize and say, well, they just can't swim. Amazing, right? That's what people will do. That's what determination is. It's the opposite of cowardness and giving in, and yes, giving up. I said one time, the mark of a person isn't what brought them down, but what has brought them back up. And I never forget that. So as your life, as you age, it's not what brought you down, because there's something that will bring anybody down. We live in an era where people are much more forthright of the challenges they have, which is good. But as with the challenges a person has, they also have to have the determination to overcome it. I always say that everybody is given something, and you need to make something out of that something that you were given. Which means it's terrible that that's happened to you or me, but this is how we're going to overcome it. I always like to talk about the story of Oseola. Oseola McCarty is an amazing individual. She's long past, but she wanted to be a nurse, and she quit 6th grade because she had to care for her family. She couldn't go to school anymore. She had to give up her nursing ambitions. And so for the next 70 years, she washed and ironed clothes. This is about one of the only jobs that she had. She never bought an air conditioner, and as you can imagine, it's quite hot in Mississippi, which is where she lived. But she lived frugally, she worked hard, and she saved her money. And at 88, she had saved $150,000 just from doing laundry and mending clothes. And she said at the time that I want to help women attain their dreams and not have to work so hard. That was her quote. She never married, never traveled, never owned a car. But she saved this money. And so what did she do with this money? She created a scholarship at the University of Southern Mississippi for $150,000. All she wanted to do was do something to help somebody. Great saying, right? Do something to help somebody. She received over 300 awards when this was announced, this great award. It wasn't the greatest award, but considering who it came from and what she had to do to get that money, people said, that's an amazing amount of money. Almost her life savings. President Clinton at the time heard about it. He invited her to come to Washington, to go to the White House. And a lady who never left her town got on a train, went up to Washington, and received an award directly from the President of the United States. It doesn't get any better than that. She had a determination to do something with her life, a determination to do something to help somebody. It reminds me that the characteristic that separates the winner from the loser, the consequential from the insignificant, and the good from the great, is the determination to go down swinging for what you believe in. Something to always remember, just like it is important to remember to work hard, which is our third aspect of a leader. First is that dream, the second is determination, third is to work hard. The world is replete with educated, experienced, and talented people unwilling to do something with what they have. That drive and determination we talked about is so important, but also the sacrifice. I said some years ago that great accomplishments and great rewards often come with great sacrifice. Great accomplishments, great rewards often come with great sacrifice. See, any person who has become successful, and usually there is a great challenge to their abilities. There's the oratorical elegance, a musical ear, a deft hand-eye coordination. These are indeed gifts that some people have. Rarely, however, are gifts given in such abundance and so completely, though, that no training or no practice is required to perfect that gift. President Reagan was a former actor, and Reverend Jesse Jackson, a former preacher, but both were well rehearsed in public speaking. Michael W. Smith was a singer, still is, spent years in a recording studio perfecting his sound. And Roger Federer hits hundreds of balls every single day in preparation to win a Grand Slam tournament. Talent, yes, but also hard work. They have this drive, these abilities, along with the energy to achieve and sustain them, that are hallmarks of a great person, somebody who's a great leader. Talent is important, but so is work. Talent is as important, in fact, as work is to education, and as education is to experience. They are all tied together. Talent forms the foundation upon which a person can work hard to perfect it. At the end of the day, there's few descriptions of a person more welcome to that individual than they worked hard at work worth doing. It consumed their life to do good work worth doing. We often can't choose the cards we're dealt, but we can choose how to play them. And that's where working hard comes in, to playing your cards. We can't look at our cards and say, wow, I wish I got a royal flush, but I only got a pair. We have to do the best we can with the pair. There's people born on first base that never make it around the bases. There's people born on third base that never make it home. There's people born halfway between home plate and first base, and all they do their entire life is circle the bases. That's how successful they become. People like Eunice Shriver. She was born into the wealthy Kennedy family, but her sister was mentally disabled. Her sister had few friends and couldn't play sports. Her sister's name was Rosemary. And Eunice thought it was terrible that other people can play sports but not Rosemary. I'm going to do something to help Rosemary. She wanted disabled people to participate in sports, so she created the Special Olympics. There's now 2.5 million participants. It's in 150 countries. 15,000 medals awarded annually. It's ranked as the most credible nonprofit by the Chronicle of Philanthropy. It's better than the Girl Scouts, better than American Red Cross, and yes, even better than the Salvation Army. Wealth, we should learn, does not present a person with almost limitless possibilities, but the options that a person chooses defines the person they become, the life they lead. It's not what one has that matters most, but what one does with what they have. Very interesting person, Eunice Shriver, who believed that there's goodness in everyone. It's a lesson to believe. Lastly, a good person. Who's the kindest person you know? I ask this question a lot, and people often say, let me think about that. I really got to spend some time on that question. They shouldn't, right? We should know what a kind person is. I believe that you can be granted or overlooked in almost any fault you have if you're a kind and generous person. Kindness is the one characteristic that allows you to make mistakes and to recover from them. And what do you need to be? What are the strategies a person has to follow to be seen as a good and decent person? First is they have to be unbelievably kind-hearted. Good people are unbelievably kind-hearted. Second is they control their most destructive human emotions, whether it's ego or jealousy or envy or insecurity or self-interest. We all have them. We have one or others, and maybe not on this list, but we have those emotions that are not good that we have to control. We may not ever be able to eliminate them. We can control them. Third is they tell the truth. It's hard to create relationships without telling the truth. They do what's right. That is, and some people say, well, what is right? What's right to you may not be right to me. What's right is what always advances the human interest. If it improves upon our society, that is good. By the way, that's not your society or your town, or even your country. It's our society. And then lastly, somebody who always looks for the good along the road of life. So, goodness, a good person is somebody who's incredibly kind-hearted, who controls their most destructive emotions, tells the truth and does what's right, and then always looks for the good. Always look for the good. It's really my principal philosophy in life. I think from the people on TV to the people that we meet in life, we see that there really is more right than what people say is wrong. In fact, rarely, as we know, do people pass through life unscathed. Births are often followed by death. Wins often followed by losses. Health is followed by illnesses at some point. Friendships often degrade into enemies. Wealth is sometimes followed by debt. But most of us can see, hear, smell, and walk. And most have sufficient food to eat and reasonably good health. Most have a job that affords them some standard of living. And most have friends to spend time with, and they're loved by and have someone to love. And that means that there's so much more in our life that is good that we should be thankful for. I always talk about graciousness and gratitude. I think that that's some of the most important aspects that we can follow. And if we become good, then we often leave a legacy that almost anyone at any point in time will look back and say, that's a life well lived. Thank goodness that person came before me, because they've made it easier for me to live my life. And the person that I often remember as somebody who was a good person, who became a great leader, is Danny Thomas. Most people would say, I don't know who Danny Thomas is. Danny Thomas was one of the great comics of his era. He won multiple Emmy Awards. He created a show called Make Room for Daddy, which ran for 11 years. Amazing story. Why Make Room for Daddy? When he was younger, he wanted to be a success. And he thought, something's not working. So he went, while he was in Chicago, he went to a church and said, will you help me in my career? And he promised that if he got some help, that he would build a shrine. And in the early 50s, he started playing at a children's hospital. And that children's hospital soon became St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It became St. Jude's Children's Hospital because shortly after he went and asked for some help, he started to become successful as a comic, and then he made this show, Make Room for Daddy. Make Room for Daddy was the springboard to create other shows like the Mod Squad and the Andy Griffith Show. He became a multi-millionaire. In fact, the home he owned some years ago, long after he sold it, it was resold again for like $150 million. He became a very wealthy person, but he remembered that promise that he would do something if he became successful. What did he do? As mentioned, he created the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Now it has over 3,000 employees, over 5,000 patients. It raises over $500 million a year, and the tagline still remains the same. No child is turned away because of a family's inability to pay. That hospital has also won a Nobel Prize for all the goodness that they have done. What an amazing accomplishment this person has. He wasn't the most talented comedian. He wasn't the most successful, or even the most wealthy. But his legacy outshines those of his generation who continued to take everything they were given and gave so little back. Not Danny Thomas. His life and the promises he kept should serve, I think, as a shining example to others. His accomplishments show that in this life, we're often judged more by what we do with what we have rather than by what we had. Long after Danny Thomas's successes in television, he will be known as a great man because he created the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Thomas lived a great life, and through that life, he allowed many others to live an even better life. Pretty great legacy for a person to have. As I mentioned, your life is not judged by what you take when you're here, but by what you leave when you're gone. And think about what Danny Thomas has left since he's been gone. Hopefully we've learned that greatness comes from following your dream ensuring that the determination that you have never wavers, never giving up, and then being someone good and doing something great. We really can dream of something better and be determined to achieve it. Hopefully the lessons in this presentation allow you to be, at least move along that spectrum towards leadership, so that when you get to be in that form and that pinnacle, that you can take that lesson that you have learned and impart to others that do something good with your time and be someone great because of the time you lived. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the day.